We're living in an extraordinary moment in history. We are at a moment here in 2025 where we have world historic, game-changing technology now starting to scale.
And I just want to say thank you for making it happen.
You're gambling with World War III.
Look what happened.
The robots are here. Our future is no longer science fiction.
I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
Former President Biden had been replaced with clones and robots that were doing the job for him.
It's a clanker.
What the f is going on, bro?
It's a clanker.
Nah, bro, these robots too real, bro.
They just look like an Apple software that I should be able to download at night.
Apple just launched a digital ID. This is going to be like your passport on your cell phone. We're getting some details about this and whether it's like a great thing that we should all kind of embrace or maybe
It's a trap.
How disruptive do you think AI is going to be?
It is the single greatest innovation of humanity ever.
Bitcoin has officially erased the 30% gains it made this year, and that too just weeks after hitting a record high. From $126,273 in October to under $93,700 today.
The amplification of our mental powers with digital computers and now AI are going to be very similar to the amplification of our physical powers that mechanical engines, initially by steam, created the prosperity and wealth of the world that we know now, where we're just going to say, holy shit, we had no idea this is the world we're in.
What is money? Now, we've seen all of the 7 definitions of money. We all play with it every day. But ultimately, money is crystallized time and work energy. Just checking. No. That's all it is. It's just like fungible tokens of your work and energy. And for years, for thousands of years, we've used hard metals, gold, silver, and the reason the preservation or the purchasing power of gold has remained stable for thousands of years is because human population was growing at a roughly 1.8 to 2% per year, and human population has typically grown 1.8 to 2% per year. But then we had these crusaders back in the day who thought, how about, you can see these videos made with AI, right? So they went on the crusades and trying to, preach the word of God. You don't believe in God? Head chopped off and all that sort of stuff. And they went from the UK all the way to Persia trying to expel Christianity. But the thing is, it was a very expensive campaign. They had to take wagons, ships of gold to fund their murderous expeditions. And so they had a bit of a brainwave. They thought, instead of lugging all of this gold, which they had to protect day in, day out for years, they found some Jewish families and thought, oh, you have a network across all of the world. How about we go to your main base in London, give you all of our gold, and you give us a special chit. And that's the creation of the first paper money, or the first paper currency. So they got these Templar notes, and then if they needed gold or a top-up, they'd go to another bullion house somewhere else in another country and go, hey, I'm a knight, give me some gold, and then they could carry on doing more killing. So, and the thing is, what we have learned is that weak money always loses to hard or harder money. We had the island of Yap, where they had these massive and also small limestone, or they called rhinestones, and they used to etch in, who owned what. You own one sheep, I own one cow, all that sort of stuff, until Europeans came along with boats and went, the whole monetary system is made from limestone, and over here there's an island full of limestone. And so they ended up owning all of the yaps. And then in sub-Saharan Africa, for thousands of years, they had glass beads as their currency. So what did the Dutch do? The Dutch went, idiots! They have glass beads as their currency, and they're surrounded with sand. They had better technology. And so they came in and bought up people, land, businesses, and people. So the universe loves pressure differentials. So high pressure goes to low pressure. We have high potential going to low potential. Uninformed, or the world's wealth goes from the uninformed to the informed. We have low economic output countries losing out to high economic output countries. And as you now know, weak money always dies to harder money. We've never had hard money. We've always had one iteration better. So what is money today? Now, there's one person who people don't really think he knows much about money, but I would argue he knows more about the modern monetary system than anyone on the planet because of his involvement in X and PayPal. So let's have a little look what he's got to say.
I mean, I think the cryptocurrency thing is an interesting approach to reducing the error in the database that is called money. I think I have a pretty deep understanding of what money actually is on a practical day-to-day basis because of PayPal. We really got in deep there. And right now, the money system, actually, for practical purposes, is really a bunch of heterogeneous mainframes running old COBOL.
Okay, you mean literally? That's
literally.
That's literally what's happening.
In batch mode. Okay.
In batch mode.
Yeah. I pity the poor bastards who have to maintain that code. Okay, that's a pain. That's pain.
Not even Fortran. It's COBOL. Yep.
It's COBOL. And the banks are still buying mainframes in 2021 and running ancient COBOL code. The Federal Reserve is probably even older than what the banks have, and they have an old COBOL mainframe. And so now, so the government effectively has editing privileges on the money database, and they use those editing privileges to make more money whenever they want, and this increases the error in the database that is money. So I think money should really be viewed through the lens of information theory, and so it's kind of like an internet connection. Like, what's the bandwidth? Total bit rate. What is the latency, jitter, packet drop? Errors in the network communication. Just think of money like that, basically. I think that's probably the right way to think of it. And then say what system, from an information theory standpoint, allows an economy to function the best. Crypto is an attempt to reduce the error in money that is contributed by governments diluting the money supply as basically a pernicious form of taxation.
So, bit tricky to understand because of the way he speaks, but basically money today is a database maintained by some ancient servers and mainframes, effectively. And when you look at money through an information theory lens, money is grossly inefficient in almost every way you look at it. And those who control that database have privileges. They have editing privileges. So they can do QT, they can do QE whenever they want. And there's a thing called the Cantillon effect. Again, GPT-5 still can't do words when making videos. So the Cantillon effect is interesting. So if I was the Federal Reserve and I wanted to pluck $1 trillion out of my arse, I have this freshly new created currency which hasn't hit the market yet. So it's like me going to a sweet shop and going, I can buy anything I want at today's prices. Because that $1 trillion hasn't hit the market yet. But the moment I start buying sweeties and deploying my $1 trillion into the market, what do you think happens? Price is a sponge. It is a currency sponge. The more currency that's sloshing around in the system, this currency sponge just soaks it all up and gets bigger and bigger, which is why the currency supply in every central bank across the world looks something like that. In fact, not a straight, or on a log chart maybe. But, and so printing really does, or if you have editing privileges and you just add a few zeros, it equals price inflation. And you have to understand the difference between price inflation and monetary inflation. Monetary inflation is where they expand the currency supply. Price inflation is when that big old sponge just gets fat from absorbing all of the spending, which is why from the beginning of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the purchasing power of the dollar has basically died. It's just a slow death. And the public we don't really get it. We are the frogs. We just go on year after year thinking the cost of living crisis is pretty high this year and higher next year. We just don't get it because it's so insidious, it's so slow. But we can see it in wealth charts. So if you look over here, this blue line is the share of total net worth held by the top 1%. So in the 90s, you can see it was around sort of 23%. And now it's got to the point, I mean, this chart is slightly out of date. It's more than the bottom 50% and the 50 to 90th percentile. So when you have a grossly inefficient currency system, then you have these vast cavities that expand, which is the wealth-poor divide. So if your weak money is dying compared to a, shall I say, harder money, can you beat this dilution via earning more? And I get this question a lot. You know, I have lots of friends who are doctors and airline pilots and, you know, PLC, C-suite people, and they're earning very good incomes. But can you outpace the rate that your currency is dying? Well, yes, if your annual income increases faster than your relative inflation rate, I'll talk about that in a second, and your savings investments grow faster than your relative inflation rate. So when you hear about inflation, they use the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. It's a massive lie. And inflation really is relative, because if you're an 18-year-old living in your parents' basement, what is your inflation? It's pot noodles, your Netflix subscription, I don't know, comics, whatever you do as an 18-year-old. I can't remember. I was just getting drunk when I was 18. There we go, alcohol. So that's your relative inflation rate. Prices of alcohol, yeah, all that sort of stuff. But if you're like an adult with kids, what is your inflation rate? It's everything. It's your mortgage, your rent, your groceries, the car, the furniture, the things that you buy for your house, the growing amount of things I buy from Temu. Like inflation is completely relative, depending on who you are and where you are, because the price of everything is moving at all times in every place. So it's a relative vector. So we just have to, I just really want to chisel into the back of your skull that weak money always loses out to harder money. And when you look at the currency expansion rate over the last, any epoch really, 20, 30, 50 years from any central bank, the hurdle rate is really 15%. The currency supply expands roughly 15% per year, no matter what country you're in. So, are your savings, investments, and income growing more than 15% per year? If they're not, you're getting poorer from a purchasing power perspective. So, your relative inflation is the delta, the difference, between M2 expansion, the currency supply expansion, and your net worth expansion. So it looks a little bit like this. That's your net worth. That's M2 currency supply expansion. The rate of you getting poorer, and all of us getting poorer, is literally this thing here. That's the way I look at money and purchasing power in my own head when I doodle little things like that. And then we're a lot sadder. So this is a Michael Saylor analogy. So Michael Saylor said, imagine you owned a dojo in Japan and you got a whole bunch of samurai warriors, and the emperor comes along and says, hey, we need blood for the war. And you go, yes, sir. And all of your fighters give 10% of their blood to the emperor. Well, if you lose blood, you lose athletic capabilities because you're losing red blood cells, which means you have less oxygen-carrying capabilities, and therefore your fighters will be at a disadvantage. They can't climb mountains, etc. And it takes roughly 4 weeks-ish to, hey, grab a seat anywhere. And it takes roughly 4 to 5 weeks to increase or replenish your red blood cell count. But so that's all fine. But what happens if in 3 weeks' time the emperor comes along and says, hey, I need another 10% of your blood? Yes, and if this happens every 3 weeks, forever, all of your fighters are going to die, or not be able to fight. And so you have to understand that oxygen to blood is what blood is for your body, right? And it's the same with an economy. Economic energy, which is the oxygen, is to a currency, which is for an economy. So there's no point. You can have the best currency on the planet. If your country suddenly loses economic energy and just goes down the pan, your currency is worth nothing. And therefore your economy is then worth nothing. And so it's like we're all on this massive global airliner and we're having a rapid decompression. The oxygen is just being sucked out of the cabin and those masks come down. But that rapid decompression is in the form of energy costs going up, lockdowns. This is an old slide, as you can probably imagine. I made this slide about 4 years ago. Benefits going through the roof, commodity costs going up. That was when fertilizer costs were quadrupling. War, the global supply chain, like all of that sort of stuff. Some of this is patched over, but a lot of this is still happening. And so we're having global economic entropy. And we're always going through, like, we're in a state of hyper-normalization where crazy shit is happening every freaking week. And we're like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's just insane. It's like we've just gone into a new universe and this is like, we are the Netflix documentary. What happens next? And so what happens with war, whether it's an invisible enemy and we're fighting World War III, COVID, or it's the Russia bad man, or it's whatever is next on the news cycle, war means tax. Now, politicians either go, hey, we've got this really bad war, we're going to have to tax everyone by X%, which wouldn't go down well for the next elections, or they do the insidious tax, which is currency expansion. That's the easiest way. Just currency expansion is stealth tax. So, you really need to understand what happened in Argentina. Now, for Mark's benefit, Mark really sort of dragged me over the coals once because on a webinar, I spent probably half an hour talking about Paola and Pablo. So Mark, I'm going to whiz through these slides. But basically, I've changed the names, but there is a real couple that I read about in Argentina. Two very well-earning individuals. One, Paola was a project manager at some company. Pablo was an oil and gas sort of engineer. Good incomes. And in 2000, 1 peso equaled $1. 2005, 3 pesos to the dollar. So we had a bit of a decline in purchasing power because a 66% drop looked like that on the chart. Nothing to worry about. They go to their financial advisor and they say, should we be concerned? And the financial advisor goes, nah, you're fine. I've got you in a lovely portfolio of diversified assets and tracker funds, like every IFA on the planet says. Now, for Mark's benefit, I'm going to speed up here because you get the picture. Every 5 years, the peso just keeps on dying. The IFA just says the same thing year after year. And the peso just keeps on dying. You see the most bullish chart ever. It gets to 2020, 62 pesos to the dollar. It looks pretty bad. They go back to, which is, by the way, in just 20 years, a 98% reduction. The chart now looks like this. And they're ruined. They literally are ruined. And the IFA, because their personal net wealth levels go below the company's minimum threshold, they kick them out as clients because that guy has given bad advice. Meanwhile, Pablo had a benign condition, medical condition, but because they were so poor, he died because he couldn't get medicine. And when I then made this slide, I made this slide in 2021 when I discovered this. Chart looked like this. They're properly buggered. And it got to the point where Paola was a single parent. They had 2 kids foraging for food in tips and stuff. That's how poor they were. So if you're Pablo and Paola, how could you have averted this crisis if they had some financial education? Well, borrow in hindsight, everything's easy, isn't it? You borrow as much as you can in the peso, i.e. the weaker currency that is dying, and you lever up to the max. You forward finance as much as you can, if you have a business, let's say. You borrow on assets in the weaker currency, so the peso in this case. You then convert the peso into the dollar, which is a harder currency. And more importantly, you store it offshore. And that's the bit where many people in Argentina did this, but then the grubby government just went in, oh, we've got a debt crisis, we're going to take your dollars, thank you, here's some pesos, and then they revalue the peso overnight. And so this was my prediction, by the way. I said in 2025, the peso would be over 700 pesos to the dollar. Some people said I was an idiot. I put that on Twitter. They're like, oh, you're living in cuckoo land, yada, yada, yada. Well, here's a screenshot from 4 days ago. 1,385. Pretty nuts, right? And we think it doesn't happen here, or it won't happen here. Well, the US currency supply looks exactly the same. The global currency supply looks exactly the same. By the way, in these two charts, the little red bit here, that's QT. It's just a little blip. Little blip. So, I need to speed things up because we've got a tight schedule today. We know that M2 will exponentially rise. Everyone's getting poorer to the tune of 15% per year. Therefore, Bitcoin is a wise move to insulate yourself from this insidious wealth tax because it is finite. And it should also make you a large net wealth growth per year. So, going back to this example of what you need to do is you need to, so if we're in the UK, you need to borrow as much pound sterling as possible, lever up to the max, and then convert that pound sterling into Bitcoin. That is the easiest, most simplest thing one can do. Now, I never buy Bitcoin for reasons you'll see later. But yeah, store it offshore, self-storage, not on an exchange. Get a Trezor. So Bitcoin is the only financial Noah's Ark out there because there are some pretty bad times ahead of us. And this is sort of the spiral that every country sees throughout history: war, tax, inflation, the trust loss in the currency and the government, economic crash, reset. Reset is normally revolt or revolution and blood spilt. And even Dr. Evil said, the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, imagine, reimagine, and reset our world. Yeah, we're seeing that. So, tumultuous times ahead. It is terminal, but Bitcoin is the oxygen mask in the cabin.
Everybody, please, get on the ark!
Time to stop playing.
What I tell you? Fine, so.
Hey, Ahab, this is it?
It would appear.
Get on the ark! Everyone on the ark now!
I think we should get on the ark. I agree. I think we should get on the ark also.
I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm going home.
Thank you.
Now for John Clark and Brian Dorr laughing all the way to the bank.
Thanks for your time.
Very good to be with you. Good evening.
Which bank are you with again?
That's correct, Brian. I've been with them for quite a while. Can answer any of your questions on that score.
Yeah, no, you put rates up again, haven't you?
Well, Brian, we don't have a lot of choice, do we?
Why not?
Well, there are only three things you can do with rates. You can put them up.
You can put them down.
Just a minute, Brian. Hadn't finished. hadn't finished. Bear with me. Only three things you can do with rates, Brian. You can put them up, you can leave them where they are.
Or you can put them down.
I'm going to persist with this, Brian, until I get this out. There are three things you can do with rates. You can put them up, you can leave them where they are, or you can delay making a decision until you think that the overall financial atmosphere is more conducive to perhaps easing them in a non-downward direction over time.
That's three options.
It is, but you can eliminate two of them reasonably briskly. You're not going to put them down, are you?
Well, why not?
Brian, are you familiar with the way bank executives are paid, the system of bonuses and options and so on?
No, not really.
No, well, I think perhaps we'll talk about this when you're old enough to understand.
There's also been criticism of the banks this week, though, hasn't there?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
Well, the government and the opposition have expressed misgivings about monetary policy.
Oh, I see. Criticism from outside the building.
Yes.
Criticism of banks from outside the banking industry. Oh, look, it's entirely possible. It's a jungle out there. I mean, we can't control everything.
But isn't there a debt crisis in this country?
A debt crisis? What's a debt crisis?
Well,
right?
people owe too much money.
People owe too... Hang on. People owe too much. That's very good, Brian. But
don't people owe so much that they can never pay it back?
You don't have to pay it back, Brian.
When
people borrow money, they need to service the loan. You need to service debt. You don't need to repay it, or you haven't got a loan at all.
What are they buying?
Oh, they buy houses and stuff to put in the houses and cars to park outside the front of the houses. And
what does any of that produce?
Well, interest. I mean, that's how we make a living. Right? We lend them the money, they service that debt, and that's how we make money.
But that's not the best use of the country's capital resources,
well, try telling them that. We don't tell them what to want, Brian. We just lend them the money to do it.
There's also been a good deal of talk about competition amongst the banks.
Well, it's said there isn't enough competition.
You were saying there is competition.
Well, there is competition among the banks, yes. There are quite a lot of us.
Well, there's four big banks.
Four of us. Just excuse me. Hello. Yes, I'm doing it now. I'm just talking to him now. Are you watching? Yeah. No, I'll tell it. Yes, it's just cropped up. I'll tell him. Thank you.
Who's that?
He runs one of the other banks. He agrees, Brian.
What, that there's strong competition?
Yep, they all agree. They're all round at his place. Fierce competition, he said. Fierce, cutthroat competition among the banks.
Thanks for your time.
Oh, that's my pleasure, Brian. Whoops. Now, excuse me. Can someone turn the lights on? I can't find my way out of here. Oh.